Well, hello there, YouTube. It's Petey, and what do you know? It's June 1st, 4 years since we said goodbye to my mother, and tomorrow would have been her birthday. So it's, especially if I find myself doing a remote around this time of the year, I always think about how I miss my mom, how she wouldn't have been impressed. So we played. We went out today. It was the second remote of the season for 2025, and I have to say, this was it. This was the best remote I've ever played. The weather was pretty good. My landlord showed up with a contractor who double parked in front of the vehicle. Made it a little bit difficult for us to get out. And my wife said, "Do you want a coat?" And I said, "No." I'm the guy that never leaves the house without a jacket. And of course, we get there and I'm freezing cold. And the thing about it is, the area where we do the remote, and I do have a bunch of pictures. We can take a look at those. It's shade. It's a structure. It's outdoors, so it's like a pavilion, you would say, maybe. Anyway, it can be 75, and that's what it was supposed to be. Like, this is our second remote of the season. It was 75 the last time we went. The only thing was, the actual day of the remote, there was a cold front, and it wasn't 75. It was 55. So it was old Jack Frost nipping at your toes. And I was bummed out. There was a lot of momentum and a lot of intent as we approached today, this remote. Like, there was a good chance this could be a really good one because we have new music and we've been rehearsing, so we're ready to go, ready to play this stuff. Now, when I get home, I end up with two memory cards, two 128 gigabyte cards. And the one has the audio files, the other has the video. So we have a Canon Vixia camcorder, and this is what we use to shoot the video at the remote. So this is a little camcorder that we got this from the online auction. I would never be able to afford something like that new, and thank goodness for the online auction, because it was like $50 for that. You know, you get a deal on it, but then by the time you pay the shipping and the tax, is it a deal? I don't know. And honestly, to me, that's all that's worth is $50. So the video, that has a little microphone on it, and it is pretty good sound, but we like to get our audio off the mixing board. That's when it sounds really good. Otherwise, there'll be wind gusts. There's train tracks right there, so the trains are Casey Jones is just letting it fly, and there's traffic. The place where we do the remote there's people fishing there constantly. Nobody ever catches anything. Today, when we were done, we were packing up, and there was a young man leaving. And I just asked him, "Hey, how were the fish hitting?" And he said, "I didn't even get a bite. But I had beautiful music all day, and what a beautiful day to enjoy it." And I was like, man, thank you. you know? Oh, I know, I didn't mean you. I have these iBud ear. No, I'm kidding. So somebody liked it. There was a guy, the older dude with a beard, who he started showing up and using this pavilion, and he just sits and chain smokes, and he doesn't clean up his cigarette butts. So we were playing last year, and he came flying up on an electric bike. And he dismounted and he sat at a picnic table and he chain smoked for 2 hours, and he did not say a word to us. And it made my wife and I really uncomfortable. He was like sneering, and he had a phone, and he was smoking Roll Your Own, and it was some kind of like Turkish extra rich tobacco. Like this stuff, it's like Fidel Castro's cigar is like a Marlboro Light compared to what, I mean, this is some weapons grade nicotine that this guy's, and he's just chain smoking these things. And of course, I'm downwind. So last year he was there for 2 hours. This year he came pulling up and did it again. And we finished the song, and I said, "Excuse me, your cigarette smoke is, I'm downwind." And he said, "Oh, I'll just go sit over here." And I said, "Well, to tell you the truth, you're kind of making me uncomfortable." And then he flipped out and started arguing and yelling at me, saying, "I come here every day." And I said, "I know, you don't come here every day. We've been coming here for 15 years. And I know when you started coming because I cleaned up your cigarette butts." And he said, "I pick them up." Yeah, you pick them up since last year when you pulled up and sat down and saw us and saw my broom. That's when you started cleaning the cigarettes. Because if I'm having to clean up after somebody and I'm physically picking up their butts, believe me, I'm gonna be detectiving that, and I'm gonna see, are they Salems? Are they Newports? Are they Marlboros? I'm gonna try to figure out, is this cool mild? Like who is this asshole? Is it Newports? Is it Marlboro Red? No. And he's like, "My cigarettes don't say anything on them." I know, because you're smoking pipe cut bag tobacco. I know what that is. I'm not a goof, you know. So he was raising his voice at me and saying how this was his place. And I said, "Well, listen, you know, last thing I want to do is have a shouting match with you. I'll just tell you, last year you came pulling up and you got off your bike and you sat there for 2 hours. You never once said a word to us, and we're filming." I said, "You know, typically if you walk in on someone and they have a whole thing going, you at least say like, 'Hey guys, do you mind if I hang out?' You don't just sit there and chain smoke for 2 hours and sneer at us." He wasn't looking at us. He was just sneering at a phone, and he was like going through some, you know, Candy Crush saga or something. So yeah, he really wanted to plead his case that he had been here, and I know you've been here. I've been cleaning up your butts because he's only been there for, I want to say 4 years. He's been there, maybe 5. We've been doing this, like, you can go back on my channel and see how long I've been shooting video in this same location. And we bring a push broom. That's the first thing we do, is we sweep the pavilion. And we got to clean the garbage up. You know, people, they leave a mess when they barbecue there. Got to clean up, pick up all the chicharron bags and all the Modelo cans. Anyway, I did have that little shouting match with that guy, and I real quickly, I was like, hey, I didn't want this to turn into a thing where we're yelling at each other. That's the last thing I ever want to have happen. But I asked you nicely. I mean, who's gonna sit there cranking, like chain smoking, and then when somebody says, "Hey, do you mind?" and then be like, "I come here every day. This is my smoking spot." Like, go fucking. You can smoke anywhere. You don't need to. Like, we're set up here. Like, maybe it's convenient for you to sit at this picnic table, but 2 blocks away from where we are, there's another park with 4 picnic tables that nobody's ever at. It's just more like kind of cars driving by. And like I said, the spot where we are, the amount of traffic, I think, was it the worst that it's ever been today? The amount of traffic?
It was one of the worst days. I mean,
it was one of the worst days.
I think one day it may have been worse when we were during the day on like a Thursday. I took off and it was like everybody was like, "Let's walk."
Yeah,
like that day was bad too.
We did have an old woman come up. One lady was like, "Oh, a party," and I was like, "No party. It's just my wife and I making our music." And she was like, "Ha ha ha ha." Then another woman came up. It was like a group of people, like 3 old adults and 1 woman. Then another, like the same grouping of people came, and the woman was like, "Is this a birthday party or like what is this?" And so I was like, I thought it was the same lady. Yeah. So I was a little sharp with her. My wife was really angry with me because I was just like, no, there's no party. It's just my wife and I making our music. And she was like, "Oh, so yeah, a bunch of people must come." And I'm like, no, like, I don't know if she's trying to call the village. I'm like, they didn't have a permit or like what her thing was, but she wouldn't stop grilling me. And it's just like the people that come that they don't acknowledge, like, okay, you can hear us. Then there's other people that are like demanding eye contact. So I'm trying to concentrate on playing my part and not screwing up. And it's really hard for me to do when it's just a never-ending parade of people. But I'm getting good at it. And dadgummit, today, if we did not have the best remote, I got to tell you, it was just phenomenal. Couldn't have been better. It was cold a little bit, like we thought. I thought I was going to be hot. I'm just absolutely racked with pain. We did bring the extra speakers, and when I got there, I ohmed them out, and one of them kept showing up as 3.3 ohms. Now, there was a 6 ohm and then an 8 ohm. And I took the woofers out of the 8 ohm and switched them to try to bring the ohms up in these other cabinets. I don't know. And okay, it's supposed to take a 4 ohm load. And I've got a speaker that's an 8 ohm, and then another speaker that's a 6, and I swapped the driver with an 8, but it's still showing like with a multimeter, and they say you can't test ohms on a speaker with a multimeter. And it's all this stuff about the frequencies and different ohms at different frequencies. So like this amp, on paper, it'll handle a 4 ohm load. So I didn't want to put a 3.3. If it's reading 3.3 on my meter and I plug it in, we're playing, and then all of a sudden I smoke the board, it just wasn't worth it. We had changed our setup, and I got this new mixer, and it ended up, what it needed an external EQ to boost the high end for the PA speakers. So for a while, I was like, these PA speakers aren't cutting it. I need 12s or I need something different. We got them both on stands. I got the new stand. We put them right up in front, and I eliminated the other cabinets because I had played with the idea of running, like we installed, because we have 1/4-inch speaker cables. So we installed dual jacks in 4 speakers, and I also swapped the drivers. So it was a lot of work leading up to this. And then when I get there and I do the test in the field and it's saying 3.3 ohms, I'm like, maybe if it was 3.6, I would have done it. I would have been like, but 3.3, like, I don't want to blow my amp. I don't want to, I heard like, oh, these boards, it's supposed to trip the speaker protection, but then people were having a hard time having it come back on and stuff like that. And I'm like, I don't even know if there's speaker protection on that board. This was like a Texas Instruments forum I was in, or like it was a brand name board. This uses the same chip, but it's kind of an AliExpress board. So rather than blow these my amp board, I decided, if I want to try running another set of speakers, I've got this little amp, this lunchbox, that's got a 50x2 with the battery pack in the back. So this has an EQ built into it. It's a pretty gainy EQ. It's a considerable, it EQs well. So it'll match what I'm doing, having an external EQ on this signal. I can pretty much match that. It'll sound the same without having to add another outboard EQ, which I have another one. I have another portable that I've built. I have 2. I don't have them in front of me. Anyway, ultimately, we don't really need those other PA speakers. We can fit it all in the car, and I want to run them. I want to run them. If I could turn the mains down and have two sets, why not? And also, there's a thing with different frequencies where the Yamaha speakers that we just got on this $25 Craigslist deal, they really sounded good and crisp. So I want to use those. I'm going to have to switch the drivers back, so that's another 2-hour thing tomorrow. Ultimately, I have these 1/4-inch to 1/8-inch cables that are stereo. And the output, I have 4 outputs on the top of the powered mixer. There's 4 with the individual trimmers, outputs for headphones. It's just phenomenal. And I'm using one to go into the external EQ, and then that goes back into the box to hit the power amp. So basically, this we tested this with those Yamahas, and it did sound really good. This pod is kind of crackling, so I'm going to replace this stereo volume pot, and I am going to, there's 2 1/4-inch inputs. I'm going to have a single 1/8-inch stereo input. So I'll have this cable that's TRS 1/4-inch and then an 1/8-inch TRS. And I'll plug that in and then into the front of this amp. And then this little amp is going to power the Yamahas. That's how I'm going to do it. So would you like to see pictures from the remote? Like I said, it just, the weather was good and I was in reasonably good spirits. It wasn't like, sometimes I'll take a caffeine pill or I'll take some psychedelics or I'll take a gummy And that stuff doesn't, like, I really, I'm used to getting up at 5 p.m. So if I got to get up at 7, I'm going to be tired. So if I take a caffeine pill, a gummy, and a psychedelic, I feel like crap. And then, like, we'll be playing and I'll just become overwhelmed, and all of a sudden I'm crying. The music just overwhelms me. Anyway, we could take a look at some pictures. If you've never seen one of these remote businesses, there's the subwoofer, and here's the guitar, the 12-inch wet, dry, wet. Here's my wife's Boss GT1B bass processor. And I got a semi-hollow body Strat, and then we're using the 10-inch Behringer PA main. Here's the setup, and there's an outhouse right across the way, which is clean. It's a really well-maintained and clean outhouse. Just down the way is this thing called the Forge, which it's a zip line. It's an adult adventure park where they have like a drop-in mountain bike track. So yeah, this is the center channel amp. I run wet, dry, wet, and this remote I use this old Zoom G3 for this center channel. So my guitar goes down to a splitter box. One channel coming out of that splitter goes to this GT and up to this amp head here, and then out to this speaker. The other splitter, this gray splitter box here, the other channel comes around here and goes into this new XMG30, and that has a send and return on it. This is a treble boost and a bass boost, and I use them in tandem, both of them on. So yeah, there are those Yamaha PA speakers that I ended up copping out when I tested the load, and I realize I probably could have done it, and at some point maybe I will grow a pair and just try it, but it's almost not worth it to me. I have to put the 8 that we switched the drivers because I thought that would change the impedance, and there's crossovers in these, so I don't know how that works. I have to put the 8 ohm drivers back in the 8 ohm cabinets because I have 2 pairs of 8s. One's rated at 6, one's at 8, and I wanted to use the 6s with the 8 drivers, if that makes sense. So I switched them, and it didn't change the impedance like I would have liked it to do. So I can switch these back, and then I can try hooking up the 8s with the 8s and see, am I getting closer to 4? If I can get a 4 ohm load, this amp is rated for 4 ohms. So if I'm like 3.9, and again, that's reading it on a multimeter, which it's really not the way to do it. But here you can see how I was using the old GT, or the old Zoom G3. And last time I had pedals, I had analog pedals for this, and I think I was using this pedal called a Joyo American Sound, and I had better tone. So I may switch back to using pedals. I just can't find my I have a Digitech DF7, and that's the Distortion Factory modeling pedal. And one of the pedals it models is a Boss Metal Zone, and that's the modern distortion sound that I want. I love the metal zone. I know people talk about how they hate that. I absolutely love it. If you're like me and you use amp modeling and you know how to use it as a preamp or whatever, I think it sounds phenomenal. Anyway, you guys, it was the best remote. It was the best one we ever did. I was really excited about that, and I wanted to share that with you guys. I'm going to be editing this stuff together, and I will have video uploads, remote jam. What a horrible word. Remote music day. I don't know. I'm gonna have to stick with remote jam. So look for those uploads soon. Hug your pets and peace.